Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for taking a wonderful time out to join in that very important immersive session. How do corporate and startup collaborate together to bring innovation quotient for the organization? Very exciting topic indeed. Very exciting topic indeed. Having been working on this peer for last 6 years, what it thought would be a very easy affair to make corporates and the startups to work together. What we discover in the process is that lots of science and processes that goes behind it to make it work. It could be in terms of the problem that needs to be defined, in terms of a specific NDA that needs to be done, who owns the IP, who does not own the IP, and the other commercial formalities. If all of them could be discussed, perhaps the journey of collaboration becomes smoother. In this world of the VUCA, the collaboration becomes even more stronger to bring everything together in one platform. We thought it'd be a good perspective to get some experienced practitioners who are from the startup world, who have engaged with the corporates or the enterprises, and the enterprise who successfully dabbled with it, probably have several learnings to share. How do we share the perspective so that all of us can collectively and collaboratively create the innovation quotient for enterprises that is required? Phenomenal proposal, because in the past we have noticed many reasons why successful collaboration has taken place. Many reasons, very many reasons why it failed. It failed not because of the idea was bad. It is just the science and process was missing. So we just thought we'll get all the things put together. In the 4 parts, in the 3-part series, what we are running at NASSCOM Engineering R&D Council, we are making the entire conversation even more specialized to engineering enterprises. Engineering enterprises, perhaps the challenges, while the common challenges are there across all the enterprises, engineering challenges where you're dealing with the physical product and what needs to be done, perhaps the issues are slightly different. We thought we'll unearth it. With all this background put together, it's my pleasure to welcome all of you to this inaugural session that NASSCOM is holding to ensure that as we move forward in the collaboration, there are several opportunities that comes which benefits enterprises to leverage the capacity that's available in the innovation startup environment, and and also to start looking at the enterprises not just only as a go-to market and a market access program, but to look at what else can it potentially contribute to the success of the enterprise. Because as it is true, as it is any new journey, it takes two to tango, and it takes time to mature, and the output of the maturity is going to be phenomenally successful to both of you and to the entire country, entire nation. With that objective, I thank all the participants once again for the time what they've taken, and I thank all the startups who are taking the pain. Don't take it as one more exercise. It's going to be a beneficial exercise. This is just a journey. We are there with you in every step of it, both enterprises and the startup, to make this program become successful. We shine once again, saying that the way we are the IT destination for the world, we will become the innovation destination for the world. That is a goal Government of India has taken. That's a goal NASSCOM has taken. That's a goal NASSCOM Engineering R&D Council has taken. That's what all of you have taken. How to make it happen? So join us in this journey. Make it a program to success, and let's celebrate the success. Perhaps in 6 months from now, re-meet again and say, how did each one of you benefit from each other's experience? Thank you so much for the opportunity, and wishing you all the best. Over to all of you. Back to you.
Thank you so much, KSV sir. That's some very powerful messaging and positive direction that we all need to work towards. On that note, a very good morning to all of you who have joined in and tuning in as we continue to speak today. I hope all of you are staying safe and doing well. So this, as KSV sir mentioned, is the first panel discussion of the NASSCOM's immersive series on corporate startup collaboration, which is all about fueling innovation and unlocking value through new age partnerships. We have spoken in multiple forums about how both the Indian startup ecosystem and the corporate ecosystem, particularly the ER&D GCCs, have independently come of age and created value for stakeholders. But there is a lot more to be gained if both of them could come together, with shared aspirations, customer-centric thinking, and complementary capabilities. And this very thought process is the genesis of this immersive series. We have over 1,200 GCCs in India, but very few of them have dedicated engines that on an ongoing basis have committed resources to drive collaborations with the startup ecosystem. However, the good news is that things have started changing quite a bit. There's a lot of traction, and hopefully through this platform, through the involvement of ER&D GCC leadership, NASSCOM's outreach, and the startup ecosystem. We want to take that number to a lot more higher. And I hope this series would serve as an excellent learning curve and increase the momentum that's been gathering. So today we will speak to organizations who've demonstrated the success through very successful partnerships and delve deeper into the first theme. And as KSV sir mentioned, the unlocking the science and the process behind it, which is exactly defining the formula for designing high impact startup corporate partnership models. We want this 1 hour session to be as interactive as possible. And I encourage all of you to type in any questions you may have on the go. And based on the relevance and the flow of the conversation, we'll either pick it up immediately or towards the end of the session. But we encourage all of you to interact with our panelists as much as possible. And I'm very excited to hear what they have to say. Clearly demonstrated success consistently over many years. Very exciting startups who've hit critical scale and have demonstrated a lot of success themselves. So on that note, a warm welcome to all the panelists. Thank you for taking the time. And without further ado, I'd like to quickly introduce the panelists for today. First, we have Hemant Shilmant, who's the head of Open Innovation and DNA Startup Alliance at Bosch India. Warm welcome to you, Hemant.
Thanks.
We also have with us Raja Ganapati, who is the DGM for Connected Car, Digital Vehicle and Mobility at MBRDI, which is Mercedes-Benz Research and Development in India. He's also the co-lead of Startup Autobahn in India and is very actively involved with the startup ecosystem here. We have 2 startups from their respective cohorts. So from Bosch's cohort of collaboration with startups, we have Paritosh Dagli, who is the managing director, Six Sensor Technology Private Limited. And from Daimler's cohort, we have Rashik Pansare, who is the co-founder and director of Get My Parking. Again, a very warm welcome and thank you for taking the time. I would now like to hand it over to our panelists, maybe in the same order, to briefly share very quick context about the initiatives or the activities that you've been leading and working on. Over to you, Hemant.
Thanks, Siddharth. Yeah. Hello, glad to be here. A warm welcome to everyone. So I'm Hemant. I've been with Bosch since the past 18 plus years, working across, carrying experience across software, across product development, business strategy, and then being an entrepreneur myself. One area which fascinated me was the engagement with startups and universities, right? So that was something 3-4 years before that was missing all the way. That is when our current president and CEO, Mr. Dattatreya Silagame, actually, when he was in his previous role, had actually set up DNA with a view of enhancing open innovation through startups. So today, I also lead the DNA Startup Innovation Program, which is in collaboration with external startups. And also along with that, Grow, which is an internal startup program in Bosch Global. So DNA works on cohort mode to look at engaging Bosch business units in India with the startups to ensure that we have a win-win situation for both the startups and Bosch as an organization together. Yeah. Good to be here for that.
Thank you so much, Hemant. Raja, over to you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for NASSCOM to inviting me in this session. For Daimler, you all know that Mercedes-Benz is the inventor of automotive, and the way we have been innovating on a continuous basis for the last 130 plus years is phenomenal, and we still are the #1 leading luxury brand. But the game is changing very fast, right? With so many tech companies coming and disrupting this the EV space, and we cannot be complacent that we are #1. If we have to stay ahead in the curve, we have to collaborate the best possible minds in the world, and that's where this initiative of Startup Autobahn started in 2016 from our headquarters. We did an experiment in 2018. With a small cohort of 6 startups to work with. We had a good success, and we launched this program in 2018 in Digital Life Day. The first time that Digital Life Day was outside Germany in Bangalore. We launched then, and it's been 2 years. We have been this is a 3rd batch that we are running today, and I'll share some more experiences over the course of the next 1 hour. again, thanks for inviting me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Raja. Paritosh.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Paritosh from Sixth Sensor Technology. I'm the founder. So we are into automotive safety systems, and we are the first ones to develop aftermarket collision avoidance systems. And we were very lucky to get selected in the DNA cohort of the Bosch India. And I can tell you that's a wonderful platform. Uh, Collaborating with a corporate is always very useful in terms of resources and everything, and we will share more experiences over the next 1 hour. But definitely it gives us a very good platform to reach out to our customers as well as resources and everything. So yes, thank you very much to inviting me for this as a panelist, and look forward to a wonderful discussion.
Thank you, Rashik.
Hi everyone, good morning. This is Rasik Pansare, co-founder of Get My Parking. We are a global smart parking platform company. We digitize parking lots into intelligent mobility hubs, and we help connect parking industry to mobility players, shared mobility, and logistics players, as well as end consumer who want convenience through mobile app parking. We were selected, fortunately, for a cohort with Daimler's Startup Autobahn project, and we had a very successful program with them, and we had a greatly accepted a demo day at the end of the where we showcased the co-creation that we had done with the Daimler's team, where parking data of across multiple cities in India was integrated directly into Daimler's app in system, so that all the Mercedes-Benz Daimler users can access parking data. So yeah.
Thanks, Rasik. You went on mute for the last bit. And also, I'm not sure if it was just me, but your network seemed to be breaking in between. You just want to check on that in the meanwhile. Thank you again to all the panelists for taking the time out. So let's kickstart with the panel discussion. And my first question is to Hemant. As head of Open Innovation India and the DNA Startup Alliance, as well as the India hub of Bosch's Grow platform, you have deep experience in bridging this ecosystem between internal Bosch core business practices and external startups. So in your experience over the years, how have you seen the overall corporate startup collaboration in the Indian ER&D space, and more particularly within Bosch evolve? Do you think it's come of age? Where are we in the maturity curve, and what is to come?
Yeah, thanks for that. Quite an interesting and a right question, because today we are at a stage where digitalization is really taking up speed, right? What we heard as AI, ML, blockchain 4-5 years ago, IoT, for example, is now becoming a serious business for everyone. And corporates which were looking at building some of these as innovation themselves are still cannot transform from their core business to this completely, right? That would be a business problem. So now what is the solution? That is where I feel startups, universities will actually play a major role. In this case, we have startups looking at a statement much earlier than a big corporate would really look at least last 3-4 years. And then with VC investment coming in, we also get to know what are the new topics that startups would really be working on, and where we are looking at from a corporate perspective is identifying the relevant areas which form a complementary area for Bosch, where we do not either want to venture or we don't have the competency to build up right now, and where we would want to partner with a startup to quickly, in an agile fashion, jumpstart and take it to the market, because being slow means being lost, right? So from this perspective, for us, it is very important to look at how we will really identify the right startups, and not just for fun, right? It's not happy engineering. We need to understand that there is a need, a prominent problem which the units business units within the company are facing, and also look at where a startup can actually fill this gap, right? Where we actually get the value from there, because it's time and effort for everyone. So at DNA, we have a very clear direction that it's not just a corporate investment for happy innovation, right? There has to be an objective, there has to be an outcome, and hence we take time and we take effort to really look at getting the problem statements first, and then going out and reaching out with a campaign to get the right startups. Yeah, so I would stop it here and continue it later. I would also like to hear from the others. So over to you, Siddharth.
Certainly. No, that's very insightful. So chase problem statements first rather than startups doing exciting things. So the customer pain points come first, at least in the context of how you've been designing your partnerships. Thanks, Hemant. So moving back to the startup view, my question would be to Paritosh, to seek your perspective on this. It's been 8+ years at 6 Sensor Technology, and I'm sure you work with multiple OEMs and the R&D MNCs in India. How do you as a startup outline key trends you're seeing in the corporate startup partnership space? Has the role that each of you are playing in this evolved? Who's taking the front seat, who's taking the back seat, or are you jointly driving this car together? How do you see the roles and responsibilities evolving?
Okay, so before answering this question, I would like to give you a brief background. So we are a hardware-based product, and we are into automotive safety systems. So as a startup, the first thing that we need is a vehicle to test the systems on, and certain resources which are really expensive as a startup, which the startup cannot afford. So I'm not talking. I would not talk about funding as or investments right now. That's everyone knows that startups need it, and they always they are looking out for it. But I would rather talk about the resources, the money, initial money. Why? Because we need to do POCs. We need to do. We need contacts for customers, for reaching out to say tier 1 suppliers or tier 2 suppliers. And that's where I think corporates do play a very, very big role in providing the POCs that we need, in providing the vehicles that we need to test our systems on. And that's why it becomes a very successful collaboration when a startup and a corporate meet. I would say the third most important thing is the momentum. Okay, corporates are a little bit slow on momentum. I can tell you that because of a lot of paperwork, a lot of processes that they need to follow. As a startup, we are very agile, we are very flexible in jumping from one role to another. And that's why we try to get a lot of things get done really quick. And this marriage between a startup and a corporate helps in getting the things faster, because we get the things faster, we are agile, and from the resources point of view, the corporates really help in giving us that. So we have a good product. If we have a good product, the execution is taken care by the corporates, and then we can just focus on the development, get a good product together, show it to the end customer, and there we are successful in that. So this is really helps in giving us a good platform and moving to the next step, next level. So that's what my thought is on the collaboration.
Right. That's very interesting. Very interesting perspectives, Paritosh. Moving back to the corporate now. So we'll keep doing this back and forth between the two, trying to understand where each of you stand. So my question to Raja, one of the leadership roles that you hold is that of co-lead of Startup Autobahn India. While Startup Autobahn, you mentioned, was started in 2016, the India chapter was initiated in about 2018. So that gives us about 3 years of working with several startups to pilot their technology. And what Daimler says the ultimate goal of this is a successful production-ready implementation. Right? Given that you have a goal that you need to work towards, what constitutes a right fit for you when you evaluate startups for potential collaboration? Do you think a few startups are more successful than the rest? For instance, you have a preference for early stage versus mature startups. So how do you really perceive this?
Good, Siddharth. I think we can go on for next 30 minutes on this question, but I'll just keep it short, and I may reflect some of the thoughts that Hemant put forward as well. One of the fundamental starting point for a corporate is identifying a problem statement, right? So we are very particular, and that's why we have been a little humble in our approach, not doing batch after batch. We are just third batch after 3 years, right? So the identification of the problem statement, when I say that, then it's already enough homework is done by the corporates, right? Companies like us. So we are looking at mature startup, right? When I say mature startup, they could have a solution which is already deployed in a, let's say, retail on an e-commerce business, right? And how that particular, let's say, supply chain can be tailored for an automotive use case, or something on machine learning, which is again used in other business domains, be it a financial domain or a BFSI, right? How you can tailor it for an automotive use case. So that's going to be one of major lookout or major, let's say, evaluation criteria that we look at. The second, I think, going back to Parishtosh's point of the corporate is going to take time. Yes, the products that we work on are very complex, are global in scale, right? And it's going to be the perseverance of this the startups. They have to run with us for a little more than this 3 months or 4 months of cohort, right? So these 3 months or 4 months, we only measure the intent of the startup to collaborate and co-create with us. The second part is the competency, what they bring on table, right? And that's where the point of staying ahead, staying with us is going to be very, very important for a reasonable amount of time.
Sure. So if I have to summarize that, the secret sauce that you're seeing, the three ingredients are, proven solutions, that have a product market fit, ideally, because you still want to be conservative, at the same time, experimentative. The second one you mentioned is the intent of the startup. You're not looking at a burst of 3 months, but something more long run. And the third, the competencies and the skill sets that they bring. And I think that also aligns with what Hemant mentioned in terms of finding those complementary skill sets, exactly. Rather than just shooting in the dark in terms of what seems to be exciting. That's very interesting, Raja. Thank you so much. And I'd like to direct my next question to Rasik. You've launched Get My Parking in 2015, and based on the research and the reading that I'm doing over the following years, you've raised capital via multiple rounds of funding, and you've also hit a certain critical scale of operations at a certain point. The collaboration with Mercedes-Benz started earlier this year, and so what I think would be good to understand for the audience is, at what growth stage does a corporate startup partnership seem optimal? For a startup that has a predictable growth trajectory. What have been your key takeaways since you've embarked on yours with MBRDI? Rasik, if you can hear us, you just froze there.
Yes. Yeah. So am I audible? Siddharth?
Yeah, audible, but there seems to be a video lag. We can go ahead though.
All right, thanks, Siddharth. So from my experience, I would say, it was, of course, a great experience working in the Startup Auto One project with Daimler. But there are always certain things you would not know as a first timer working with a big corporate. And not only with Daimler, but we have also had customers across the globe who are big corporates. So be it with a startup program like with Daimler, or even as a vendor customer relationship across the globe with big corporates, the learnings are somewhat always the same. Number one is the expectation setting has to be right at the beginning, because a lot of times startups have a different expectation of momentum, and very different expectations there from the corporate. So matching the speed, matching the appetite, so not just the speed, but appetite, like how much to take on right from the beginning. So seeing that a phase-wise solution approach is much better while working with corporates. So break it down, whatever you want to do, the vision, just break it down into parts and try to do one step at a time only. And that's one thing. Second thing is, I've learned that focus on the numbers and the impact. Many times startups, the founders, entrepreneurs are very passionate about their solution. And that's why they take it for granted or very obvious that, hey, you know what, whatever I am selling, this is a must have. Why can't the world see it like that? but you have to go beyond that bias and try to pitch the impact it will have for the particular specific corporate you're trying to work with. That what does this mean for Mercedes-Benz? What does this mean for an XYZ corporate? Doesn't matter how great you are doing otherwise as a startup. Okay, so that's the second thing. The third thing I've learned is that you have to you have to do right benchmarking, because if you don't if you don't manage the entire project with right kind of expectations and benchmarking, you will have different expectations with the outcome. You would think at the end of the program you have achieved something which is great, maybe the other party doesn't believe that. So setting the benchmark also right is something which is very crucial. So these are a few points that I think we have definitely learned from our experience at Get My Parking. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely, and especially a good point that you made is suddenly when a startup gets the scale of resources that typically a corporate has the ability to tap into, you don't just go all out. You still focus yourself to the problem statement, and hopefully not bite more than you can chew. That's a good takeaway. So thank you on that. So my question back to Hemant and Raja to try and get the corporate perspective. In our discussion previously, we kind of realized there have been multiple partnership models that have evolved over the years. Hemant, you mentioned you're looking at co-creation, joint go-to-market, potentially investments and even acquisitions. So partnerships between corporates and startups have taken many forms. Each of them have their own pros and cons to it. So the question really is, what partnership models do you think you will continue to experiment with? And based on your historical, the experience that you had, the expertise that you've built, what's worked well and what has not worked well? And especially if this is a messaging that you want to share with the more nascent GCCs that are setting up in India, who are looking at India as an innovation destination, what would be your messages to them in terms of the right models to pick?
Raja, you want to go first, or?
Yeah, I can go first. So the first and foremost is about in terms of what do we want to do from GCCs, right? So we call it as startup worthy problem statement. So there's a lot of filtering that we do just to ensure that this is a area, this is a topic, this is a problem statement that we really want to collaborate with the startup, not do in-house, not do with existing big IT players, but really with the startup. So the fundamental question that we put across in our organization is that, is it something that you really want to work with startup? And that sets the tone for the real partnership. So the partnership that has worked for Daimler is predominantly on two areas. One is technology partner. So when I say technology partner, we really mean it, because when internal teams work with an IT player and also startup, we clearly differentiate the model at which we work, right? The teams have to be agile. The teams have to be accommodative with the startups, understanding the startup. The startup is going to bring a complementary skill. So we very much focus on bringing technology partner here, right? It's not a supplier, it's not a vendor engagement. We really differentiate this engagement in a way that we are taking the solution to a different orbit than what we would do normal course of action, right? With our own internal competence or our own partnership that we have with the suppliers, typical IT suppliers that we see in the day, right? The second most important is that we also look at go-to-market, typically in countries like China and India, because you have the mobility players like Get My Parking. We also partnered with Map My India for one other solution in the COVID days. So we also look at go-to-market, but it is very specific to those individual markets that we want to kind of bring a quicker solution, right? So these are two predominant models that we operate in. The headquarter team does operate in investments. We have not explored that so far in Indian context. Maybe time will tell us whether we go in that direction. Yeah, over to you, Hemant.
Thanks, Raja. Quite interesting, because so I think we similarly, I mean, we work with similar mindset, and I think At least that is where we've been successful. So Bosch in Germany is also part of the startup Autobahn, and I've been attending some of these sessions. So with Bosch, what is happening is there is also a global program called Open Bosch. And this is being set up with a perspective of encouraging startups. So there's a investment for certain proof of concepts as well, and looking at encouraging open innovation and creating an impact. So in my role, I'm also a part of the global team as a Open Bosch venture manager, and that is where it actually helps us additionally. So till last year, we were mainly looking at local for local, right? Indian startups for Indian business units, Indian topics. But from this cohort, we are also looking at local for global and global, international engagements where Indian startups, we have already connected many Indian startups to our counterparts across the world, Bosch counterparts, where there's a good potential for startups to pitch in their ideas and convert it. And additionally, we also take in startups from, let's say, Germany, Israel, Australia today, to really work with our units. So it is becoming more global, and it is not really restricted to an Indian scenario, to your comment, Siddharth. So today, the engagement is becoming more of a strategic partnership with a view of, as you rightly said, it could get into a mode of co-creation for technology, where topics like, let's say, blockchain, even Linux, for example, Linux competence, AI, ML, these can be onboarded onto Jumpstart, and we learn a lot of how to deal with such technologies, and it can be an integral part. I mean, corporates do not need to build everything today together, right? You can really partner, and that is a faster way. We focus on the core. We work with, as I said, the complementary parts with startups. And then the second important aspect, what I would like to bring out here is, um, it's not just that the corporates need startups, right? So the other aspect of startups are today choosing the corporates very clearly. Earlier it was that, okay, I want to be a part of any incubator accelerator, has now turned to, what do I as a startup really gain by spending this effort? Yeah, I mean, it's not just about money, as Paritosh talked about. It's about, what do I gain? Can this help me to kickstart my journey, to jumpstart my journey to the next level? Is it adding value to me? So there, corporate are not at, let's say, flying high by opening an incubator accelerator, but there's a very quick, very thorough level of choosing the corporates and choosing the startups. So this is where we are evolving, and I'm sure this will go into a next level where even startups will also start choosing corporates. Okay, I want to work with this corporate, and start approaching. We see so many unicorns happening today. Yeah, and then say, can you be my partner? So this is around the bush, and the big corporates will not continue to be the big corporates, but it will be a corporate with a focus on multiple things versus a startup corporate which focuses on key focused vertical. Yeah, so this
Sure.
over to you. Yeah.
Absolutely, very interesting. Thanks, Raja and Hemant. But just a follow-up question on that, right? Because we're increasingly seeing the importance of getting the problem statement right before you go any further. I think all of the panelists agree on that particular point. So both at Daimler and at Bosch, who's really sourcing the problem statement? You know, you're front-ending the partnership ecosystem with startups, but are you sourcing the problem statements from the business verticals? Are you going out there to the market trying to understand, you know, where the future is, what customer pain points are, and how is all of this really coming together? Question to both of you.
So from Bosch perspective, we have a team, and we have dedicated program leads who actually be a part of these discussions to collect the problem statement. But how we do it, we actually run a digital campaign. where we through web and we collect the problem statements, we filter it out depending on the relevance and the strategic fitment, and then we reach out to each of these business units and have a 30-minute discussion to understand what they wish to get out of it, right? And these problem statements are also coming with all the necessary fields to capture why do they want to work with a startup. All these things are captured. Whatever I have talked about is captured as a part of this. And then we have these pitch days where the startups, 3, 4 startups pitch for a single problem statement. And then there are deep dives with each of the startup to understand what can really happen within the next 4, 5 months. So this is the process we do. And if it is a really strategic fit and we feel it's an important addition to Bosch and to the global team, there's also a provision for investment into the proof of concept. Over to you, Raja.
Yeah, so in our context, the innovation funnel itself, we have a mechanism to bring, as I said, startup worthy problem statement to solve, right? So if an innovation which is very trade secret, we keep it internal, obviously, right? And we kind of go through this patent mechanism. But when it comes to a topic which is we have to do a quick prototype and see how this could kind of fit into my overall scheme of the product, we try to say, okay, this is startup worthy. Let's move to the startup Autobahn program, right? This is one way where it comes through this innovation funnel. The second, obviously, is that we do a lot of internal branding to make people to move into this orbit of being accelerated development cycle, right? And the teams which gets motivated by this internal branding of working with the startup, they really want to work with the right set of people across the board, and they would kind of churn out further ideas and problem statement that they want to work with. And the third one is, like Hemant also mentioned, we call it a deep dive or tech meetup stay, right? We line up set of startups, let's say, be it on a machine learning, be it on a very specific computer vision based machine learning companies, right? Or it could be like mobility providers like Get My Parking. We bring these companies together and bring those experts and the startups to have an exchange for one full day and try to kind of evolve this. Okay, this is what is available in the ecosystem. Why don't I solve it with startup instead of I doing it organically for next few months and years, right? So this is a third one, which is really is something which has given us good results over a period of time, right? But it takes time because it's important that the internal stakeholders, the tech guys, see what the startups bring on the table. Maybe they know it at a very high level, but when it comes to a deep tech, it needs that conversation of few hours to really understand the minds come together, right? So, and that's something which we heavily focus on to get the right topic, right problem statement to work on.
Okay, that's very interesting. Certainly a lot of due diligence that needs to go upfront before you take that first step. Thanks, Hemant and Raja. Just we're a little over the halfway mark. Quick note to the audience: this is an interactive series, so the panelists are very open to taking any questions. They've been sharing the trade secrets, the formula that they've had to designing their partnership programs. So if you have any questions that you may want to know to gain some contextual understanding, do type it in the chat, and we would take that up as we go. Thank you. And so Raja made one point on, the trade secrets. So, I want to pick up on that thread and move to both Paritosh and Rasik, try to get your thoughts on this. So startups today are at the forefront of innovation. You're working on cutting edge technology. So as much as, corporates have the resource know-how, the knowledge base, you at the same time are also bringing in certain IP into this partnership. So how is this how has this really worked out? IP sharing models, the comfort that you've had with opening it up, working together on common problem statements. So would really love to understand your experience on that front.
Should I go ahead, Rasik? Okay.
Yes, you can, Paritosh.
So ours is just to reiterate, ours is a collision warning system, ADAS, Advanced Driver Assistance System product. Now, what happens is we have been in the field for a long time, as in we know what are the problems that is the real on-field problems, and sometimes interacting with the corporates, they understand the problem statement, but they sometimes do not know what are the real on-field problems, because we have been in the, like, with the drivers traveling in the trucks and buses to understand what are the real problems actually when you go on the field, when you go driving, what are the real problems. So sometimes sharing the IP, definitely it helps, but the problem statement gets a little bit widened. We know what to focus on, and we go, as mentioned before. Also, we do it phase wise, so that each and every problem statement we solve it in the right way. But sharing the IP and along with the corporates is the way to go, because otherwise you will be stuck, as you won't, there will be no way forward. You definitely have to share the IP with the corporates, and that's how you will get to the next level where you can solve the problem. So yeah, so that's my take on that.
Okay, so from my side, I would add on. So first of all, I agree with whatever Paritosh said on intellectual property. You have to lead by opening yourself up with trust and obviously documentation. But then the thing is, there's something beyond just sharing of IP. I would say it's more of co-creation also. The sharing goes both ways. So each party brings their own technologies and intellectual property, confidential plans to the table. So there's, I think, trust from both the sides. And then there's definitely the demand to keep things very closed loop between the agreement. And then, of course, there's co-creation angle, where it's not much about what you already have. It's more about how it gets applied and integrated for the particular corporate you're trying to work. So I think in today's world, you don't really have separate discrete solutions anymore. The world is moving more towards a collaborative ecosystem kind of a play, where you, instead of having a software, you have platforms, right? Instead of apps, you have APIs. So in that kind of a scenario, I think, at least from GitMap parking perspective, we have never struggled with the intellectual property part. And in our case, even the data gets shared. So, while we are GDPR compliant with European Union's data privacy laws, so even with the data getting shared and connected, we are able to, manage that level of, having confidentiality and IPs protected, while at the same time not that hindrance as an hindrance for co-creation application.
Thanks, Rasik and Paritosh, for that. Definitely very interesting to hear your side of the story on that. So we did get a couple of questions as we were covering this question. The first one's from Pratibha Ramchandran. So the question is, other than technology partnerships to integrate new products, what other kinds of partnerships and purposes exist between corporates and startups? And maybe if I could add a little bit of flavor to this question, are you also looking at moonshot opportunities, something really innovative that's way outside of what you would traditionally do as an organization? Are there those kind of partnerships as well? And I'd leave this question open to the entire panel. I'd love to hear any of your views on this.
Maybe I'll share my 2 cents, right? We will look at moonshots, but we have to understand the context of the business, right? That's where it's very important that the startups understand what this corporate is looking forward to do, right? So today, if you look at automotive, there is no more automotive. It's all mobility. And how do you bring mobility, right? There are multiple flavors to mobility today, right? And in that sense, how companies like Daimler could look at a different orbit of technology, different orbit of how you bring connectivity, right? How do you look at a 5G technology to bring in, if a vehicle becomes completely autonomous, what can I bring? What kind of content I can bring on, right? And we are talking about multi-screen. It's not just one screen in the car. We're talking about screens across the entire car, right? So we are looking at moonshot, but that's where it's important that the startups go towards understanding the domain more when they work, right? And that's going to be very, very different in the context of mobility and automotive that we are looking at.
Yeah. So just to add on, right, when we worked with Paritosh and team from Sixth Sense, the whole intent was not just to create a entirely new product. We also looked at how to bring in safety, security into existing products, existing offerings from Bosch, existing automotive, which was existing. So, so it is one to enhance the capabilities of an existing product, but dimensionally, there are other things which we also do. It could also go into a business model enhancement, right? It's not just a product. How can you change your business model by integrating the offering from the startup? You do a one-time sale, you move from a one-time sale to a recurring annual revenue-based sale. Yeah, how can you digitize the product? So it's not just the new products, or there could be certain new, as a part of the strategy of the corporate company, we would be looking at bringing in a new topic into the company, a new domain, for example. And to jumpstart that, we would probably look at an inorganic way by acquiring a startup. And what better way than to start working to assess a startup through such alliance programs, to really look at working with the business units, and if it's really to look at if it's adding that additional disruptive value, then we also look at investment into the startups. I mean, not just in India, even globally. So these are the kind of partnerships or the purpose with which we also look at working with startups.
Yeah, echo Hemant's thing that we can definitely. So there's another way to go to the market, a different business model, where it could be a recurring business model where, say, the corporate is front ending the customers and we are the back end, because obviously they have a better, huge brand and great name in the market. While we, with our product, with our technology, we can be at the back end, working in that particular manner. Second is sometimes it really helps in also in a public-private partnerships where there are public like tenders and everything, where the startups don't have the revenue that is required in the tendering process, right? And where the corporates can really help in having that kind of numbers, and together they can be in the tender also. So these are some of the ways where you can work, the corporate startup can work together.
If I have to add something on that, I would say that first of all, of course, I agree with all the three panelists. But in addition to that, I would say we have seen certain projects happening which are moonshots also while working with corporates. And we have also seen where the project is very, very focused with the corporate on a very near-term goal, because at the end of the day, so Siddharth, this goes back to what Raja was saying right at the beginning of the session, where he was saying we have to lead by business problem statement. So I think startups have the flexibility in general to do both moonshots as well as near term, very solution application oriented. So I think it shouldn't be driven by what partnerships or how long term or short term is the collaboration going to be. It should be more about what business problem you want to solve, and whatever it takes to solve that, it takes. Now, how do you break it up into phases? How do you manage resources and timelines? That's something to be left for the project coordination. That's one thing I wanted to add. The second thing I wanted to add is that, for example, we being a global company, we do some really advanced stuff, moonshot stuff in Germany, and we do some really entry-level stuff in Indian market. So, for example, with Daimler only, and Bosch also actually indirectly, Get My Parking has done projects globally and in India. In India, we have done a basic parking integration with Daimler systems. In Germany, my company's technology was involved with Bosch sensors and Daimler's Mercedes S-Class for autonomous car parking. So a Mercedes S-Class gets parked autonomously. And in that case, Bosch camera sensors get used, Get My Parkings, access control technology gets used. And you know what, this entire ecosystem came together because the way this project was done in Germany, the parking operators over there use Get My Parkings technology. So we were already present in that market through another channel, which led to this entire collaboration ecosystem to happen with multiple companies involved. And it was a moonshot, which has become a reality. It's not a moonshot anymore. It's out there on the road. You can buy that and experience that. But you know, these are some examples which have actually, you know, they prove that you just have to focus on the problem statement and then get it done.
Definitely. You know, thank you so much to all the panelists for taking that up. And I think the example that you just quoted, Rasik, speaks volumes of the collaborative ecosystem that we've created today, right? It's not just corporate startups, it's corporate startups, probably even policymakers. You've got the whole bunch of them coming together, solving a single problem statement and filling in different threads in that. We do have another question from Claire Raja. And I'll pick up a couple of questions. I'll pick up one of them for now. And I think that would be focused more towards Hemant and Raja. What cost model is more effective with startups? So let's consider that you're moving into a POC phase, still in the very exploratory part of the journey. So the question is, you know, is it fixed pricing for a project, or time and material, or you know, do you do a salary plus markup? Or maybe if I had to add to that, you know, some outcome-based revenue sharing models. So what have you experimented with, and what are your views?
It's very dependent on what we are doing. So if it is a POC, for example, we cover the cost. It's definitely not a T&M. We don't just pay for salaries and ask them to do it. It's more of a project outcome pricing to make this happen. What is it that you need? And of course, within a very short time, right? POCs run maximum up to, if it's with a hardware, new hardware, 4 to 6 months. If it's a pure play software, we would look at around 3 months to be a good time frame to execute and come up with an MVP, right? It's not that we want the full-fledged product to be rolled out. After that, it is again dependent on where we want to go. We run with partnerships. If it is a go-to-market partner, the startup becomes an equal a player in the game. We do sign joint contracts. If it is a startup as a provider, right, where we white label the product, then it's a back-to-back contract where we sign, and there's again a fixed price for the project. Very rarely when it is coming to a competence that we have had T&M. Yeah, but then it was not because it was a startup, but only because the startup had the competence. We engaged also for the service.
And Raja, would you like to add anything here?
I think Hemant covered it is based on each use cases, each scenario. But one important thing that is that when we do this initial POC, we have to support the startup, right? It's not a free make, just to be clear, right? We have to support the basics of what we need to need them to do in the POC phase. Once the POC is successful and the team wants to take it to a serious development, it goes based on the scenario. What we have experimented is predominantly outcome-based, fixed price in that sense. T&M is not a right approach for a startup, in my opinion, because we are going back to this vendor-supplier constellation. I think I personally think startups also would not prefer to have that model. They want to be challenged on outcomes. They're ready to take the fixed price, but it's not that we kind of define everything at the beginning, right? Again, we are trying something new, which the large corporate wanted a partner to work with, right? So it's very, very important that we are a little flexible in that fixed price, not really being very particular about that milestone. But yeah, we have to be accommodative. It's not a typical fixed price model that you used to see in the industry in the past. Yeah, that's very important.
Sure. And those are very, very insightful, and I'm sure the startups who have joined us today would also, like to make a note of that. as they plan on their partnership programs. Just a quick time check. We have about 5 minutes remaining. And I think it's really important because one of the objectives of this series is to create shared learning opportunities for organizations that are embarking on their own partnership journeys. Maybe new age GCCs, innovation COEs that are set up in India who are looking to tap into the startup ecosystem, or startups who want to now scale up and get the reach of what the corporate has in India, or probably even get their global reach. So what I would want to ask is, from a corporate perspective, Raja and Hemant, what are your top recommendations for startups who wish to engage meaningfully to drive direct customer impact?
For me, it's important that the startups actually understand the intent with which the corporates are actually reaching out to them, right? And when there's an opportunity, Raja mentioned, right, when we are very serious about what we wish to achieve. And we look at what is the value for both the startup and the corporate coming out of it. It's not just that we want to engage them as a service, right? Very, very key. And in this case, when there's an opportunity, the startups also need to look at how do they voice out and get what they want. Because sometimes in the hustle bustle of everyday life, the business units may go into a stagnation, or they may get roped into some other critical topic with which they would not focus on the startups as much as they were doing when it started. But it's also on the owners of the startups to ensure they have the right to look at, come on, we are doing this, let's have this objective, give one person who works with me to make it happen, let's do it together, right? That is something which I feel there should be no hesitation. It's a right. So both should really focus and get to the outcome.
Yeah, maybe I'll emphasize again on Hemant's point on the second one, right? It's going to be very important that startups stay up and say what their strength is, what they can do, what they cannot. I think that's very, very important. And the startups are hungry, right? And it's also important that if they don't see the pace at which it has to go, they have to raise their voice and say that, hey, maybe I need some interventions from the central team, guys. Can you guys support in moving this faster, right? I think being very clear on their objective, as Hemant said, that why the entire program is constituted from the corporate side, and how we can be the enabler, we can be the accelerator for the corporates, is going to be important for a win-win model, right? We cannot have everybody in the same mindset to start with. It is important that we build that culture over a period of time, and that's important that people build that open communication and trust.
Thanks, Hemant and Raja. And likewise, corporates today are seeing immense value in collaborating with startups. It's accelerating their growth story. It is accelerating their time to market. So Paritosh and Rasik, what are your recommendations to corporate leadership to ensure that such partnerships drive tangible value and go beyond just the POC?
Why don't you go ahead?
You can go ahead.
I would say I would also corporate. There are a couple of things here. So beyond first thing is obviously the pilot that we need. Second is the contact in the industry. Funding comes really later, but and third is the resources and the momentum that we need. So I mentioned those points before too, but these are the main points that we need. And initially, I would also mention with the corporates that not per se Bosch or Daimler, which are here. I'm just talking generally about corporates. But many corporates have this tendency of having POCs free of cost and not putting in the initial investment. Then startups, I would say, which are not funded, are always cash trapped. And so that's one thing I would like to suggest the corporates, that that mindset of getting free of cost is hurtful with because initially it breaks on the momentum. But that's one thing. But apart from that, it's I would say it's collaborating with the corporates is definitely a big thing, and that should be there, always there.
Thanks. Rasik, your views?
Yeah, my views. I echo what Paritosh said about free POCs. As a startup founder, I would say a strict no-no. In fact, we as a company have decided we will not do any free pilots, not only for corporates, but for even any customer or vendor. If there's no seriousness from the other side, there is no skin in the game. Why would the founders and their team also invest? Because it's all opportunity cost at the end of the day. So that's, I echo that thought, of course. Beyond that, additional points from my view would be corporate should look at not with Daimler. I'm saying in general, we have experienced certain negative experiences with some corporates, and this is this is, I have heard from other startup founders also, very common, that corporates, just because it's in trend, will launch some competition or launch some accelerator program, get some startups onboarded 3-4 months in, they do some demo, do some press releases, media, and all. That's all forgotten. Okay, so nothing actually productive or constructive comes afterwards. So it's I would say that that's a huge buzzkill for all the startups who want to work with corporates. It leaves a very bad taste. And if any corporate wants to attract startups, they should look at them not just because it's in something in trend, or that's because that's everyone's doing it, but because they have some problem statement and they really want to solve it. And instead of thinking that, hey, so this is build versus outsource model, right? So instead of me building everything from scratch, if some startup has already done that, can I just leverage that? Can I just collaboratively explore that? So if that's kind of a approach, that would be much better, and a long-term solution would be much better.
Absolutely. Those are some extremely valid points, and it's great that we're having the open discussion and addressing the points that people typically would not like to do. And this is all the series was aimed at, having a dialogue around creating more impactful partnerships. So on that note, thank you to all our participants, the audience, for joining in and tuning into today's session. We will continue to have 3 more sessions over the following weeks, every Thursday at the same time. And most importantly, to our panelists, this has been an extremely informative session. Several actionable takeaways for, I'm sure, everybody who attended this. And thank you so much for being so open and transparent about the way that you've been working and sharing your learnings from your journeys. And we did have a few more questions. We will try and address that. One of the other intentions, part of the series, is to publish a playbook of sorts to serve as a guidebook to stakeholders trying to embark on this journey themselves. So we'll try to address the questions in that with inputs from our panelists. On that note, thank you everyone again for your time. It's been incredibly insightful, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
For that.
Thanks, everyone.
Wonderful day.
Thanks,
See you.
everyone.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Be a part of it.